And again, this is just these people lining their own pockets at the public expense. And the third and final stroke we're going to see played out, or final stroke so far, let me say, we will see played out in the Dáil today, where incredibly a explicitly fake opposition grouping in the Dáil is going to be allowed to speak ahead of real opposition groupings. An incredible situation where TDs who are signed up to support the programme for government, who have ministers in the government who have said they'll vote with the government on good days and bad, are incredibly going to be facilitated, at least for now, in pretending to be opposition, in taking opposition time and in taking opposition resources. And of course, we shouldn't be surprised that all of these strokes are taking place when the so-called kingmaker of the government is Michael Lowry, a profoundly corrupt politician who has been found to be such by the Mahon Tribunal. A guy who received significant money from Denis O'Brien, in exchange for which he ensured that Denis O'Brien got the mobile phone contract. He also received, we know, significant financial benefit from Ben Dunne, in exchange for which he tried to massively hike the rent on a building being rented at a public expense from Ben Dunne. So, you know, a guy who Micheál Martin, Simon Harris have condemned in the Dáil before, and yet are now happy to allow to shape this government. And the point that this is important, because while Michael Lowry is in effect the kingmaker, the people behind Michael Lowry, the real puppet masters here, are the likes of Denis O'Brien, who continues to have significant power and influence in this country, the likes of the Larry Goodmans and the other multimillionaires and billionaires who this government is going to run the country for. You look around today at those barriers, who is operating those barriers, who is getting money from those barriers? That is Denis O'Brien. That is Octavo, which you will find not a single lobbying return from Octavo in the lobbying register, but you also won't find a lobbying return from Michael O'Leary when he goes and has a nice dinner with Pascal Donoghue. So this is stroke politics, whereby the country is being run in the interests of the super rich at the expense of those who suffer from the housing crisis, from the health crisis, from which these people, like Denis O'Brien, get super rich from driving down, for example, the public health service. I think a big issue is going to be, and we will make it a big issue in the Dáil today and over the coming weeks, is this question of the fake opposition grouping. A big challenge is before Verona Murphy. Verona Murphy became Ceann Comhairle as part of this king-making deal, which resulted then in this government. So, you know, I think it is not possible for a genuinely impartial Ceann Comhairle to find in any way otherwise, based on the standing orders as are currently written, which says that groups are for opposition TDs, it is not possible to interpret the rules as they are and to say it's okay for government TDs to take opposition time. She has kind of provisionally ruled, but said she's going to wait and see. We've obviously put in a joint submission in relation to that. We hope that she will read the rules properly, will read the submission, and then come down to the right decision. We have insisted. I mean, she wrote the letter that people will have seen last Friday night, we all got. That is based on supposedly OPLA legal advice. OPLA legal advice is not just for the benefit of the Ceann Comhairle, it is meant to be for the House as a whole. So we've insisted that the advice as a whole is published and that the instructions that came from Ceann Comhairle that requested that advice also be published, so we have full transparency in everything to do with this. The other point I'll just quickly make, which relates to the mobilisation outside the Dáil that will be happening all day, is the incredible betrayal of the election promises made by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the outgoing government, in relation to the Occupied Territories Bill. They promised people, they said, don't worry, we can't do it till after the election, but we're going to pass this bill with amendments. Explicitly, Micheál Martin in the committee said, we considered doing an alternative bill, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to amend this bill. Now it's clear they're going to scrap the Occupied Territories Bill and replace it with a bill that at best will be much reduced and much weakened, in particular by removing services which make up the majority of international trade and make up the majority of trade in Ireland. They're trying to significantly diminish this, and it comes hand in hand with the introduction, incredibly, in the programme for government, and then Martin signing off on it in his capacity as Minister for Foreign Affairs, of signing up to this IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which equates, in the examples that are provided, which equates criticism of the state of Israel with anti-Semitism, which is used to silence those who have spoken up against the genocide that has been taking place, live streamed before us, and against the ongoing occupation, against the ongoing apartheid, against the ongoing oppression. And it makes it all the more important that that should be dropped from the programme for government, that should not be implemented, but also that the full Occupied Territories Bill needs to be implemented.
Right, so Paul already dealt with a lot of the stroke politics and the issues around speaking time, so I'm not going to deal with that too much, but just suffice to say that I felt like I was transported back to the 1980s when I saw the character of this new government. We've got misogyny, we've got homophobia, we've climate denial, and we've business crookery writ large, all in the new government. Some of the faces, like Grealish from the PDs. You have obviously Michael Lowry, the silent figure in the background, who was meant to be persona non grata. And you have the Healy-Rays, with all of their backward views. But really, I think what anybody who's interested in what's happening in the world and in this country is interested in is not so much those details. It's what happened in the White House in the last few days. We're seeing fascist salutes, and people can put whatever spin they want. He did it twice. We're seeing billionaires, standing beside the president, locked in, intertwined. It's extremely frightening what's going on. And this Dáil, and the left in this Dáil, has to challenge and expose that the system, that capitalism is becoming more divided, more brutal, more racist, stirring up divisions in order to keep their unequal control of the world's resources and of the planet. Outside, we hear probably the biggest political issue now in Ireland and in the world is what's happening in Palestine. And as has been said, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and this new government have, on two fronts in relation to Palestine, changed their tune. Now that the election is over, they gave people this erroneous impression that they cared about Palestine, that they were going to act in October. They said that the Attorney General said that the Occupied Territories Bill was now legitimate, wasn't unconstitutional. What has changed since October to make it suddenly unconstitutional? The only thing that's changed is Donald Trump and US big business and corporations have put down the gauntlet to the mainstay economic policy of the Irish establishment, which is foreign direct investment paying low or no tax. And so the government has decided to prostrate itself in front of Trump, in front of the MAGA tech bros, and to stay silent on the human rights and the hugely important issue of the genocide on Gaza. The protests will go on today. There'll be a big protest on Saturday as well. I don't think that the Irish people will appreciate this change of tune on behalf of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. And it's certainly something that we will be raising, vociferously. It's absolutely scandalous that the government is going to push through a cessation of the Dáil until February. We have a housing crisis, we have a climate crisis, we have an autism schools places crisis in my constituency. People don't know if their kids are going to have a school place, and yet the government is packing its bags until February. It's absolutely unacceptable to operate in that way.
Paul, do you expect emotional no confidence in Donna Murphy to follow if she doesn't yield on the opposition speaking point?
I mean, it is there in black and white. Anyone can Google standing orders, Dáil Éireann, I think it's 174, which speaks about groupings being for opposition TDs. You're not an opposition TD if you're signed up to support the programme for government, if you have ministers, if you had a hand in drafting the programme for government. So this is not some complicated issue. So, I mean, we will withhold judgment, we will withhold final judgment until Verona Murphy makes her final decision. But yeah, I do not think it is possible for an impartial chair to rule in any way other than you cannot be an opposition grouping if you're a government backbencher. That it is not possible to find your way to that position. So exactly what we do at that stage we'll need to see. But
See, that's the direction of travel.
I mean, look, let's give Verona Murphy the next. I mean, it's unfortunate we wanted, and the other opposition parties want a business committee next week to discuss this, to take a bit longer time than you would at a normal business committee meeting to tease it out, etc. It's unfortunate that the government and Verona Murphy did not want to meet next week, so they've pushed it off again, as well as pushing off the Dáil. So looks like we'll have a decision within 2 weeks.
Is the business committee definitely not meeting next week? I thought it just wasn't meeting tomorrow. Surely it will have to meet next week to discuss the following week's business.
Sorry. It was that's right. We were pushing for a meeting this week, but then they pushed it off to the next week. So it'll be like a week and 2 days until or a week and a day until they meet. Let's see then. But like I said, I don't think you can be an impartial Ceann Comhairle and reach any conclusion other than you can't be a government TD and sit in the opposition benches.